joining us today on the Survive and Thrive Challenge. I'm Laura Brandao, the president of AFR, and on today's show, we have three wonderful challengers. Let me introduce you all to them. From Maine, we have Brendan Fontaine. He is a mortgage broker from North Star Mortgage. From Tucson, Arizona, we have Piper Watson. She is an entrepreneurial consultant. And from Dallas, Texas, we have Suzy, I'm sorry about that, Suzy, Lindblom, the Chief Operating Officer at Planet Home Lending. Okay, so what we look to do is we gather each week to get different perspectives from people throughout our industry to kind of understand how did they first react to shelter in place and all of these changes. And then after that, we learn how they're thriving all these weeks and months later. So Brendan, you're up first.
Okay.
Tell me, take me back to March. Okay, here we are. We're in the middle of March. We're hearing about lots of craziness going on with COVID. And then we're also hearing about mortgage rates all over the place, programs going away. What's happening in our industry? Tell me, first reaction, what was going on with you professionally and also personally?
Well, I hope I hope some people get some good laughs from this, because it's probably as extreme of a situation as you could be in. I think you interviewed Lee Gagnon, the owner of our company, a few weeks back, and so North Star is pretty much as much of a family as it is a company. It took me years to come back and to join the broker world, but long story short, Jason Gagnon, the owner, married to Lee, he's been one of my childhood best friends. So his sister is my processor. Okay, so it's family, right? But my wife is his sister's best friend. So big picture here, March 6th, we are all boarding for a cruise together.
Oh.
So with our collective 11 children and in-laws, we are going on the last cruise allowed to leave Orlando or Cape Canaveral. And COVID was brand new. I mean, we really didn't have a clue what was going on, but safe to say, I mean, we're all family, but we all work together. My wife's the top agent, so she had a ton of purchases going at the time. And, up to that point, life was good. We really didn't have, I mean, we were kind of on a good course going into that time. But we boarded a boat together, and it was the first time I've ever had my temperature checked, and that was sort of eye-opening. That's the first time I've ever had that happen, and we've been planning this trip for over a year, and they were all telling us, if you want to go, if you want to turn back, you can have a full refund. And we were all like, what's going on? Honestly, like, I just felt work is sort of like my world, and I just feel like I don't watch the news. I'm sort of naive. I really didn't understand really what was going on. And so basically everybody in my inner circle of work was with me at the time. And we didn't know how we were going to really pull that off, because typically when I go somewhere, Jason and Lee and my processor can hold things down. But this time we're all going together. We learned pretty quickly how serious this was. I mean, I thought nothing could be worse than the NBA shutting down. I mean, I literally
that was probably your first tip off, right? That this is serious.
I was like, come on, like, I've never even heard of that. Like, I was like devastated. But again, not able to put into context really what was going on around the world. You're on a boat, and I think, as Lee had mentioned, it felt very sanitary, almost very sterile. Like, they did everything they could to make it that way. But at the same time, we didn't know we didn't really have a perspective as to what was going on back home. So, throughout that week, there started to be some pretty incredible changes to our industry while we were on the boat.
Oh, wow. That literally, Brendan, that was one of the worst weeks there was. That was when the rates were plummeting and all the volume was coming in. And I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah, it was only the only other day I felt, back in 2008, I remember I woke up one morning and rates were a full percentage point higher.
Right.
I've never felt anything quite like that. And so here we are on this boat. And typically, we're all our best sort of crutches, and we bounce ideas off each other. We're all like, is everything going to be okay? Right. At the same time, we're trying to stay positive for our kids. We're trying to have fun. We're on a vacation that, I'll never go on a cruise again, but I just thought, we're going to go. It's a once in a million sort of opportunity. And honestly, it was like, Lee and Jason were like, do you think rates are going to come back? And I'm like, of course. And then everything just seemed to get worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I knew things were getting bad when I was having some private messages from friends and saying, hey, how's your supply of like tissue paper?
Oh, get out. You were literally getting private messages about your PPE supply.
I'm getting text messages and instant messages on Facebook from friends saying, hey, we'll go and get you stuff for when you come home.
That's
and
very nice.
I don't even know what you're talking about. They'd send me photos and I was like, wait, that's my supermarket? Like, it's completely barren, completely barren. I was thoroughly convinced we were the last boat to be allowed back into port.
Wow.
And I was thoroughly convinced by the time it was, so I went from being completely naive to completely terrified.
Right.
As to what was going on. I was pretty sure there was some sort of zombie apocalypse happening. And it was like, this is like all the horror movies really sort of happening all at once. And loans that I thought I was going to close, prospects I thought that were going to, everything seemed to just come to a dead halt. And I just, we all kind of came home and all went to our respective homes, and, the rest is sort of history, right? It's like, that was where.
So what happened? You come back to port, right? You guys were not quarantined. Like, they didn't quarantine the people that were on the ship.
No, we were not on our boat. Our boat was, I think the last boat, I was told that there was one boat that was held out in sea for a little while, and I don't know what the difference was, but we were allowed to get off the boat. Okay. And we all kind of scurry. It was this great trip, but then all of a sudden we all had to sort of scurry our own ways to get home and do whatever we could do to get back. And
what was your thought? Okay, so now you're back, you're in port, you've got your family, know what happened in the mortgage business during this time, plus the pandemic is starting or happening. What's running through your brain? What's the first thing you're like, I need to do this?
Well, damage control, I think was it for me, because I had so many clients that, prior to this week happening, rates were fantastic. I had so many people that I had, either quoted or built scenarios for that, and there was really no urgency to really pull the trigger. I said, hey, I'm going to go on a vacation. I'll be back. And everybody was absolutely patient and no problems. And then all of a sudden those rates were gone. Right. And a lot, I'm 100% referral, and it's all friends, it's all my network. And so obviously, I do everything I can to honor everything that I quote somebody.
Yeah.
And I literally got to a point where I'm like, I'm so far out of the range that it just couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So basically, between overlays coming overnight, rates changing overnight, there's so many huge changes that just sort of came into place. I really had to just look at every client, everything that was in my pipeline, and reevaluate, and basically reassess, almost everything. And as soon as we got back, it was like offices were closed. It was like, you can't go back to your office, and for good reason. I mean, we were all afraid to go back to our offices, and nobody wanted to meet us in person. So
I was gonna say, and you were just on a ship, so we probably needed you in quarantine anyway, right?
for sure. And and ironically, it's like I was catching a lot of heat from people on social media because I was on this boat, and everyone was a few individuals were telling us, please quarantine when you come back. And again, I mean, because I didn't have full access to the news and what was going on, I couldn't quite understand their sense of panic, that like I could be possibly bringing something in that could hurt people. So I was like, come on, like, what are we talking about? But the reality set in pretty quickly. We got home. Yeah.
Wow, that is quite a story, Brendan. My goodness, I think if there couldn't have been a worse time to not be working. Wow, that. All right, we'll have to plan that next vacation and know when you're going, just in case. All right, okay, Piper, take us back to that time. What was happening in your world, and what was that first reaction?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, it sounds like there's a common theme of just, oh my God, like all of a sudden, that probably happened for everybody. And that point where it kind of clicks into place, like, oh, this is serious. Like, this is real. And for me, around mid-March, my husband and I have actually been traveling in a camper for the last 2 years. We rented out our house in Baltimore. We left our jobs. We ran a nonprofit, decided we wanted to do something different. I took on some consulting work and we hit the road. And we had just decided after 2 years to get some elbow room and rent a little casita in Tucson and kind of stretch out. And this was February. So March comes around and we've got friends coming out to visit us and we're doing some outdoor adventures. And, 4 people had just left and 1 person was still here and he was continuing on to Hawaii to see friends of ours that just moved there. And he's like checking the news. He's like, maybe I should just hang out in Tucson a little longer. Like, I don't know if flying to Hawaii is a good idea. Our friend was pregnant. We're like, yeah, stay as long as you want. Like, you're welcome to stay here. So literally the day that he decided, I'm not going to Hawaii, I need to go back to Baltimore. I need to just like be with my family and not spread anything. We find out that our renters in our Baltimore house need to move out. And my biggest contract, like 100% of my monthly income, pulls out because Maryland is mandating everybody close their doors, and that's their business. They were like a huge acupuncture clinic with multiple locations. So I had no job. My husband's job, he was going into people's homes. So he was like, I'm not doing that. And then our renters move out. And so then we have 2 houses to pay for.
Oh boy.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, it was literally like, okay, like I'm going to sit in panic and despair for about 24 hours. That's kind of like my max. And then it's like, okay, kick into action, right? There's always that period of like deer in headlights, panic, feeling like, oh my gosh, why is the world happening to me right now? And some solace in that you're realizing, oh my gosh, this is happening to everybody in some way, shape, or form, right? So I went out, I got a job. I was a frontline worker in one of the local natural food markets because I didn't know what else to do, and it's like, you just have to make decisions. And I'm okay with uncertainty and like pivoting really quickly. Is it my lifelong dream to have worked in a grocery store? No, but it did the job for 2 months until we could like figure everything else out. And now things have totally swung back the other direction in full force. But man, in that moment, middle of March, it was literally like our lives, my husband and I, and everyone else around us, went from this end to this end, you know, light to dark, night to day. It was just a complete unexpected 180.
And I think, you know, the common theme of all these weeks of hearing everyone's story, the biggest thing is we all lost control, regardless of what was happening in our worlds, right? It was that we all want to have control over what we do and what our life is like. And then in a blink, we all lost it. Yeah. Regardless of what you're doing or how great things were going, it all changed. And I think that has been the hardest thing for all of us, is just that, now what do I do? Because I can't control this, you know, now what do you do? And so Piper, that's a great story of you kind of lost control and all these unexpected things came, but you then took back control of saying, well, I have to do something, right? I have no choice here. I have to do something. And that's wonderful that you were like, okay, let's do it. You know, we're going to pivot. What other choice do we have? So, all right. So hold tight. We're going to hear how that story ends as we fast forward. All right, Suzy, what's happening in your world in March?
You know, in March, so number one, I travel. Well, let me rephrase that. I traveled a lot for, you know, my job. And I happened to be in Texas, which was a good thing. I was home. So I was home when this really hit and it started making the news. You know, you'd heard a little, like Brendan said, you'd heard a little about it, but you didn't hear, you know, you're like, okay. And then, you know, in March you hear, okay, New York. So I'm like, okay, you know, I got to
stay away from here. Don't come here.
You know, right. I've got to watch the New York office. I have to make sure things are good there. And then you start hearing about it a little more. And then you have employees. And, you know, that was the big one, is the employees really, okay, what are we going to do? You know, and if somebody coughed in the office, oh my gosh, you know, you know, it's like, somebody coughed. What are you going to do about this, Suzy? And so, you know, really working through the emotions of everybody was the first reaction. And then it was, you know, I would be honest, at first I was like, okay, this is going to be contained in, you know, cities like New York and so forth. And then you just hear it keep going on. And it's like, okay, you got to start making decisions, sending everybody home. So first we said, anybody who's uncomfortable, you know, can go home. So that was our first thing, because some people didn't want to go home. They wanted to stay at the office. So we went through that evolution of, if you feel uncomfortable coming in, we want you to stay home. And we had that first. And then, you know, the diehards that wanted to come in, and quite honestly, I was one of them. I'm a very social person. I like going in the office. I've never worked from home. I just wasn't that, you know, that person that worked from home. So I was coming into the office with a group of, we went from about 125 in the Dallas office down to about 14.
Oh, wow.
So there were about 14 of us that were coming in. And then it was like, okay, look, everybody's got to go home. We've got to, you know, and quite honestly, and I'm going a little further in my story, and I'll save most of it, bringing people back, and we're not bringing them back yet, but we have people that want to come back, is so much harder than having them go. But I kind of went through the denial that Brendan went through. It's like, okay, this isn't that big. This isn't going to be that bad. And then it just exploded. And, you know, Laura, like you said, what the market did that week, you know, watching the pipeline, making sure, you know, that the pipeline was protected, and trying to make sure, keeping people, you know, their mind ease. And people were doing comparison back to the, you know, the early 2000s. Oh my God, it's going to be another mortgage meltdown.
Yeah.
It was, you know, so much was going on in that month. It almost feels like that month was a year. You know, the hours that we worked.
Yeah,
and I mean, trying to figure out how to get people home, how to get equipment home, how to keep the pipeline strong, how to keep people calm. Yeah. You know, it's a month that I don't want to relive.
I totally agree. I mean, I can remember I had my team members calling me going, Laura, are we going to survive this? So it's interesting, right? You're in the middle of a pandemic, right? Where people are worried about getting sick and having illness. But on top of that, people are concerned about their jobs, their livelihoods, the companies that they've worked for 10 years, you know? So yes, Suzy, tough.
Then all the rules that were coming out. I mean, you had 20 new regulations on a daily basis, you know, from, you know, the CARES Act and what you can do from a state level, what you can do from a county level. And then, is mortgage an essential business? Is mortgage not an essential business? Can we go? It was insane. It was an insane month.
And then it was the whole thing of what's going to happen with forbearance and what happens on the servicing side. And I mean, there's a whole, you know, everything. And yeah, I agree. But in one way, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but it was almost like you kind of were happy that we were so busy with work, because in a way it kind of kept us sane of, okay, we kind of ignore what's going on out there in that bad world, like the zombie apocalypse, right? Like, okay, the zombies are coming, but we're busy. We have a lot of families to help. So we're just going to keep working.
Yeah.
Until it was like you, like, and Brendan, is what you referenced, until you went to the store and you couldn't find it.
Right.
It was like, are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah.
Then you go on Amazon. You're like, oh, I can just order on Amazon. Nope, that was gone too.
Or like,
how many times I got up at 7 a.m. to go to BJ's to get Clorox wipes, and be told at 7:05 that they were already sold out, and just my wife crying on the other line.
Oh.
You know, she's a big Clorox fan.
Oh, no. So Suzy, did you have a lot of people working remote previously, or did that mainly happen during this?
Probably about 25% working remote and about 75% non. So, you know, actually getting them home and having them work, you know, just like the rest of the industry, it's actually been interesting because there has been a lot of productivity lift. And there's, you know, it's moving them to that has been interesting. Again, I still have people call me every day. When can I come back? When can I come back into the office? But it's probably about 25%. So it was a big push getting everybody there and getting everybody set up. But, you know, I look at it, we can do it. We did it.
We did it. We all did it, right? We all did it. And like you said, with probably the highest productivity that we've had that I can remember, you know? So absolutely. Now, Suzy, I know there was a couple of personal things going on also during this time.
Yeah. So, you know, it's, you know, I know a lot of people talk about having kids at home, and I have kids, they're called four-legged kids at home. That's all I have. So my kids are grown, and, you know, going through, you know, looking at the perspective of what other people are going through, you know, I have, you know, my son got married in November, and my daughter-in-law and my son are going through a pregnancy now. And, you know, you don't think about that, about what they have to go through. He can't go into the doctor appointments with her. So, you know, and it's very heartbreaking for them. And, you know, you listen to what they're, you know, trying to bring, you know, having a pregnancy during this. And, you know, she has to go to the doctor appointments by herself. And, you know, you can't video it or FaceTime while you're in there because of the machine. So, you know, she has to text him, you know, this or wait until she comes out. And so, you know, that's been watching them go through that has been a little heartbreaking, you know, not being able to go out. You know, we're trying to plan her baby shower now, and, you know, trying to plan, we're actually going to do a drive-by one because a lot of people don't want to come. I have a stepdaughter who's getting married in October, and, you know, when you're getting married, people, oh, congratulations, you know, we're so excited for you. She gets, are you sure you want to get married? You know, do you want to get married during the pandemic? You know, do you think it's secure and safe for people to come to your wedding? You know, that's a lot on these young kids or any age going through these life events and knowing that this is supposed to be a really special time for them. and they get these questions, and then they start feeling guilty. Should I be doing this during this time?
Yeah.
And trying to help them through these situations is so hard on them. And then you start thinking about your employees. Everybody is going through life events and trying to handle, their kids at home. Should they send their kids back to school? Should they not send their kids back to school? Their kids coming in while they're on meetings. I was on a call, and all of you will enjoy this, I'm sure. I was on a call with 85 salespeople the other day, and my dogs decided to get into a fight right next while I was talking. And I'm trying to keep talking and just kind of ignore that. I finally I'm like, guys, I have to put you on mute. Let me put you on mute. I got to take care of the dogs. I will be right back. And people find it funny, but it's these things that happen, and it's it's been different for me. I've finally gotten used to working at home. I still don't like it. I'd rather be in the office, but my dogs fighting was a minor thing compared to, and so I'm trying to, that's one thing that I'm really working on, helping my employees and my kids, even though they're adults, go through these life events, because this is traumatic to, a lot of them, and trying to figure out, how to help them navigate this new world. In Texas, it's mandatory for us to wear a mask. Mm-hmm. And so you go out, you have to wear a mask. And, I will tell you, my husband hates it. So he goes out less because he does not want to wear a mask. But, you try to think of other people and what they're going through. And I think that's really been a lesson for all of us is, how we handle this pandemic and how we go through and think about it from a personal standpoint and from an employee standpoint. Yeah. I think has been a huge lesson for all of us. Piper, what you went through, so many people have gone through that. Yep. and are still going through it, right?
Yes, absolutely. All right, we're fast forwarding now. We went through the March, the trauma that happened and drama that happened to all of us. Now fast forward. Okay, so we're months into this. Now I want to know, and Suzy was kind of alluding to a few things there, so we'll come back to her, but what have we learned from this? Okay, I think the world has changed. We've changed, right? Our families have changed, our team members, everything is different. Now, what have we learned from it that we actually have said, you know what? No matter if you take out the magic wand and poof, we're all back to exactly before March, what would you actually keep doing? Or what are some of the lessons that you learned during this time that regardless if magical everything is back to February, what would you keep doing? Brendan?
Well, I think, after watching other episodes of this, I think that time management, learning how to, going back to teaching my kids when I didn't know the curriculum, working simultaneously, also being dad, and then being the mortgage broker that I am with the clients that I have, finding ways to really manage my time the right way. That was a challenge. That was the hardest challenge for me, and I still and like I've heard, I prefer an office. I learned that my kids don't fully understand what I do for a living or care what I do for they when I am home, it's playtime, and that includes my college kid that moved back home. Okay, so I think what we've talked about is and what I've heard a lot is that my clients have really, when they hear my children in the background and they hear me say, I'm sorry, but I have to put my kids on a Zoom call. Can I call you back? It did humanize that experience quite a bit. at first I was completely humiliated because, believe it or not, like I try to conduct business and keep it separate.
The way it was. You tried to conduct business the way it was prior to that.
I mean, I don't want everybody hearing my kids screaming and my wife yelling at me all day long. It's like, I don't want everybody knowing the real world, right? So,
but that is the real world.
But that's the real world. But that's the real world. And all of a sudden, I got to this place where I realized that if I'm blessed in my business. I've been doing this now, going on to 14, 15 years. And Laura, you were part of my career at the very, very beginning. I'm all referral. And so people, it's almost like they know me on Facebook, and they kind of already know what they're getting into, right? They already know my world is a circus, and I've got
Brendan, secret. Hey, Brendan, secret. Their world is a circus too.
Oh, I know.
I know that.
I know, but I try to keep that from people as much as possible. But what I learned is if I set proper expectations, and really, really good ones, like really proper, like, because I'm an optimist, and prior to this, if I told somebody I'd give them docs the same day, I'd get them docs same day, one way or other.
Right.
And what I've learned from this process is, okay, fill out the application, and I can promise in 24 to 48 hours, I'll give you a response. And that was the only way I could really sort of manage that volume that was coming in. And I felt like I got a lot of grace. I got a lot of patience and understanding from people. And that was actually really nice to see, because I just assumed that if I didn't give them an instant sort of response, that I would lose the deal. Right. And so I learned a lot in this process that people just like to have, you don't have to be instant in your answers, and you don't have to be the fastest, as long as you're honest and and like you
give them the communication.
Absolutely.
As long as you communicate and set the proper expectation. And it's interesting. I've heard that from numerous people that have been on the show. Like, that definitely is something that a lot of people have concluded.
Yeah, I learned a lot of lessons. And even from clients that are in high level sales, that'd say, "Hey, it's okay. We get it. I hear the kids in the background. Just let me, like, if you say something, just let me know when it's really going to happen." And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to just change what what I'm telling people to reality, like what we can really do. Right. Because I can't tell you how many times I would honestly think I could do something, and then my wife would be out on showings and say, "Oh no, you have a Zoom call that the kids have to be on," right? And I had no knowledge, right? I had no, so all of a sudden, like, the plan just went out the window, right? And so that was probably the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway I would take from this is that just that communication with clients, and setting proper goals, proper expectations. The spring just turned out, and where we are right now has just been incredible.
Yeah.
I honestly would never have predicted, could never have imagined we would be where we are right now, considering where we were when we were on that boat.
Come a long way, baby, on that one. Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
That's right. And we're very blessed, all of us, for being in that situation. All right, awesome. All right, Piper, what have you learned? What are you going to continue to do?
Well, I'll kind of piggyback off of what Brendan was saying with the time management piece. I've kind of likened it to perspective management. And how, before we were talking about, like, when everybody lost control, like everybody freaked out. And really all that we have actual ownership over is our perspective and our response. Love that Brendan was talking about being an eternal optimist. I'm right there with you. But we absolutely find ourselves in these places where the perspective is, why is this happening to me? Like this kind of victim perspective. And then maybe we get like a little frustrated or angry about it. So we can choose like anger as a perspective. And then we kind of get into this like acceptance mode of like, well, it is what it is. Gotta make the best of it. And then we start to kind of move out of that space and think about like, man, I'm pretty lucky. Like that person has it way worse off than me. I wonder how I can help them. And then we kind of expand even further into like, what are the opportunities really? Like, what are the opportunities that are present now because of this? And maybe even expand further, like, what are some far reaching ways to collaborate and make like big changes in whatever industry that we're working in?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you could just be sitting back and saying, I mean, what does all of this really mean anyway?
Right.
And so for me, it's, I work a lot with my clients on perspective and on perspective management and time management as they're starting their businesses or choosing to grow their businesses. And it was a real eye opener for me to kind of get back to basics and like walk the talk and realize, oh yeah, this is what I teach people how to do all the time. And now is a really good opportunity for me to walk the talk and choose, how I want to view this situation. And, the more that I choose to, have a broader mindset about a situation, the more fruitful the situation becomes. The more goodness I see, the more, call it gratitude, call it whatever you want. But it's true. It's, if I'm going to sit in my cave and despair over what's happening, then likely there's not going to be a whole lot of opportunities knocking at the door. And instead, just kind of opening myself up to new things and new possibilities, I think is the big takeaway that it sounds like a lot of people are coming to terms with, and realizing that the only thing they can count on is how they react to a situation.
That's right. And it's interesting that you mentioned about opportunity. So I was telling you guys, I was listening to this mastermind thing yesterday, and on top of the let your kids and the dog come into the Zoom call, they also said that, Brendan, you were speaking about social media, right? Like you're out on social media. And they were saying that since the pandemic, the amount of time that people are spending on social media is up like 43%. Okay. Now, when you think of like an originator, like Brendan, right, that's out there connecting to people and having an opportunity to meet other people and to kind of show a view of his life and to show the opportunity of purchasing a home or getting a lower rate or taking cash out or whatever it is, or a program, that's a huge opportunity if you look at that, right? So yes, there's lots of negative things that happened, but I think we have come to that perspective part of the opportunities. I mean, all of us are seeing the opportunities within the industry, that it is a perspective, right? So it is how you're looking at it. So I love that, Piper. Love it. Awesome. All right, Suzy. Now we fast forward. What did we learn? What are you going to keep doing?
Well, it's so I will piggyback off of both of them. Time management definitely has been one. But not only time management for me, but looking at, my employees, my family, and, giving them the time, so my first 3 days at home, I ate everything in the house. It was convenient.
Wait, did you make sourdough bread? I just want to know. Did you bake?
I did not make that. I'm not. Okay. No, I didn't make sourdough bread, but trust me, I did everything in the house. And I said, okay, this is not going to work. So I started taking my conference calls that I didn't need to be on the computer. I started walking. I was walking 5 miles a day. So
nice.
I started walking. I started bike riding. I started doing things. And I don't have, the separation from work to home. I didn't have that separation anymore. And I'm one of those people that have to separate, or I'll keep working. So at the end of the day, instead of driving home, I got on my bike and rode. So I started taking time for me, started taking more time for me, and thinking about, okay, this is what I need to encourage other people to do, because we get too busy in the world. We don't take time for ourselves. So that's definitely one thing that I've learned. I've also learned that, people can work from home. People can work from home with kids. People can work home with dogs. People can work home with spouses. Brendan, it's funny that you said that. I have a friend of mine, he says, I had to go in the office because my wife had such a long honeydew list for me. I was working double. So It's funny because, one time my husband, he didn't think that anybody could see him. He comes in to tell me goodbye because he's going to go to the store, and then he was totally embarrassed because he didn't realize that anybody could see him. So, learning that life is funny. Life is funny. You're going to have things. And I do think that it's humanized us. But so two things: time management, taking more time for yourself, and knowing that you can adapt to change, and that you just have to look at the bright side of adapting to that change, and then how you're going to take that change and bring it forward, even if we do go back, which I don't think we are. But if we all of a sudden went back to March 1st, I'm hoping that we can take these changes and apply them to the future, and we don't go through as much as we did.
I agree.
And I stopped eating out of the refrigerator 24 hours a day.
But it is funny. I mean, those first couple of weeks, that's all you saw on social media was what people were baking and cooking and
Yes.
eating. And it was really funny. It was like everyone was making these grand meals, So
Yeah,
and
not
then,
me.
yeah, not me either, Susie. But then it turned into exercise challenges, right? Then the next thing was how many exercise challenges. So it is funny, but you are correct. Another tidbit of information: the number one skill you can have as a human is adapting. Because people that can adapt to new things are true optimists, because you look at things as, oh, it's just a change, and you adapt. You don't fight back. Right. So we are all adapting. We're all getting our adapting muscle stronger every day, and we are doing very well. So you guys have been awesome. This has been great. We are at the point where we hear who's joining me next week. So Brendan, who's up?
Shannon O'Connor. She is main processing. She processes for Kate. Yes, and she has a unique perspective.
Wonderful. Listen, I can't even tell you the things I've learned from hearing these stories, but I can tell you we're very resilient. We're actually amazing people, coming together in our industry. So it's always an honor. All right, Piper, I think you're still working on yours, right?
I am, but hopefully the wonderful, marvelous Brenda Bertrand will be joining you. She's an author, speaker, mindset coach. She's brilliant.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Hopefully we will see her next week. And Suzy, who do we have?
Sarah Batenga Gonzalez. She is the COO at FGMC, so First Guarantee Mortgage Corporation.
Wonderful. Looking forward to it. You guys have been great. We wish you well. We wish you success and happiness in everything. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, Laura.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.